Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here every Wednesday night. This is Where Are All the Women, which was named, I think, in honor of Matt Walsh. And every other single person in the world who can't seem to figure out where all the women are. We put them right here. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to support the channel and so that you get notifications when we do go live. And if you want to join the live chat and ask us questions, or you have comments that you want us to address live on air, I recommend using the super chat so that we see those questions, but I will try to keep an eye on the chat regardless. This is Mary Lou Singleton, who is here with me every week. Thank God. I wouldn't be here otherwise. I don't know what I would talk about. I would just complain about all the things that I don't like. Taylor Swift, Brussels sprouts, cats, Beyonce. Beyonce is the new one that I'm just like so fucking over. Oh, now I probably just demonetized myself.
Yeah, that remake of Jolene was pretty awful.
The whole thing. I mean, I resent that I even know that these songs exist. Like they're, well, it's just, it's so weird how I'm sure people who are more online than I am understand exactly how these things work and think that I'm a naive idiot for not understanding. But like everything on Instagram is paired with Beyonce's new country song. And there's all these accounts like hawking her and like how great it is and how amazing she is and like, oh, die for this cover of Jolene. And all of it is so bad. And I just feel like once again, I'm being gaslit.
Well, at least heavily marketed to and told what you're supposed to like. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, the best Beyonce Jay-Z story I know is from when they had their first baby. I have a friend who's a midwife in New York City who told me this story that that couple, that super wealthy couple, Beyonce and Jay-Z, they wanted total privacy for their birth. So they rented out, they like bought the entire New York Presbyterian maternity labor and delivery ward. And they were the only people birthing there they had it for like a 36-hour period. And all the other hospitals in the area had to absorb the overflow because this huge hospital couldn't do any births. And she said like women at the other hospitals were birthing in the hallway and birthing in the triage rooms because those wealthy, entitled people took over a whole hospital and no one else could use it for that weekend.
They're so delusional. And like, I can't get over how, first of all, defensive the plebs are of these disgusting elites, and the fandom that they insist is their own original personal fandom that just comes from within because Taylor Swift is just a really talented artist and Beyonce is so amazing. And I've felt like this way about most modern pop music for some time. I know that I've talked about this ad nauseum on the stream and elsewhere, so I'll try not to drag it on for too long. But it's like, you're like, how do you not see that this is just being fed to you? I mean, fine, okay, enjoy what you enjoy, but this isn't, like when I was young, this is also starting to become a stream of like, back when we were young, if only it was 1994 forever. Like I used to spend so much time, and not really even when I was young, like throughout my adulthood, I've done this as well. I spent so much time seeking out music. Like I would spend hours and hours and hours trying to find new like underground hip hop that I'd never heard of before, and like delving through the deep dark crevices of classic rock beyond the obvious to find things, and going through these old records that I'd never heard of to find new stuff. And you do find really amazing stuff when you do that. And I don't know. I guess people have always just liked basic pop music, and maybe some people still do those things, but I don't think you should be proud of it.
No.
Or pretend that it's your own taste.
I wonder, is it because we don't have royalty that I look at how the Brits are so many of them are so loyal to the royal family, and they don't like it when you critique them, and they feel very personally invested and loving toward the royals, and Beyonce is one of our royals here. It's it's interesting. Yeah, I don't
I
get
guess
it.
so. We don't have God to worship, and we don't have the royals to worship, so we go for Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
These manufactured icons.
Yeah, exactly. Megan wanted to let us know that she took a baby step to coming out as a TERF, and reposted J.K. Rowling's post from the other day on Twitter. So good for you.
Right.
Keep going. J.K. Rowling's she's like so great. I mean, she's always been so great, but she's gone full sarcasm.
I love her so much. And now we were just talking about not loving celebrities, but J.K. Rowling feels different.
For sure. Well, I don't think that she's been forced on us in the same way that Beyonce has, because, she's also been trashed endlessly by the mainstream and progressives.
Right. And she's not making any money from being a TERF. Like, it's not increasing her wealth and value. She's not selling a line of TERF merchandise or marketing. In a way, I mean, she's making it cooler to be a TERF, but it's not a capitalist marketing scheme. But I love her. I'm so excited. You saw what she did about challenging the Scottish hate speech law. And
I did. I
beautiful.
Yeah. Can you tell us what she did?
So Scotland just passed this, or enacted this horrific hate speech law that says you could be jailed for up to 7 years for offending anyone from a protected class. So including obviously men who say they're women. And as soon as it was enacted, J.K. Rowling posted all these tweets calling men, really calling them out, and then said, come arrest me. I'm ready. come arrest me. And the Scottish government made a statement saying that nothing she had said breaks the new law, so she set this precedent that they have said on public record doing what she did is not in violation of the new law. But then she put out another tweet saying, I'm hoping that precedent also holds for women who don't have the same wealth and power and status that I have. And she said, if any woman is arrested under this new law or held accountable through this new law for calling a man, she will repost her words and the police can come arrest them both.
Yeah, that was my favorite one. I thought that was amazing, because it was like, that's of course what we should all be doing and what we all should have been doing from the beginning. But that's also, I think, the thing that makes the most difference. Like, I don't know that a New York Times article or op-ed questioning whether or not we should be using the term assigned female or male at birth, sex assigned at birth, is going to change people's minds. I think that it would more be like, or change, I guess it's not, I think that to me, it's less about changing people's minds at this point. It's about the institutionalization of gender identity ideology and the fact that this has been written into law, and that, all corporations and institutions have signed on. So it doesn't actually really matter what our minds say. But I think that if everybody from the get-go had been like, no, we're not going to call a man she, like when I got kicked off Twitter or whatever. And I did get a lot of support. I'm not complaining for lack of support, because I did get a lot of support from people on Twitter for saying that men aren't women. But if everybody just said that and stopped being mealy-mouthed about it, then, they can't arrest us all. They can't ban us all from the internet. But because it was just some of us, they could very easily ban some of us and cancel some of us and fire some of us. and then wait until, now when it's sort of comfy and they can see the tides turning to be like, maybe this isn't so good.
I know. What did you think of that op-ed today in the New York Times?
Well, I didn't read the whole thing. I was enraged when I saw the headline, and I don't have a subscription to the New York Times, so I don't read a lot that they're publishing nowadays. But I just couldn't believe that. Like, it's exactly how I feel. And it's what we talked about last week with Jennifer Say around the COVID response, where they're just trying to pretend like they're just being rational all of a sudden, that they didn't push this and go along with it and refuse to engage with any kind of criticism, question, or debate for all these years. And now they publish a post that's titled "The Problem with Saying Sex Assigned at Birth." And I was just like, fuck off. Like, don't. Like, what? Stop. Like, and I mean, I'm not criticizing the op-ed necessarily. I have respect for Carol Hooven, and I'm not familiar with the other author, Alex Byrne, so I can't really speak to what I think about him. But it's just so, the fact that it's like a science-y article. I think she's an evolutionary biologist, evolutionary psychologist, evolutionary biologist. And she's the author of T, The Story of Testosterone. And Alex Byrne is a philosopher and the author of Trouble with Gender, Sex Facts, Gender. I don't know. It's just, I'm annoyed by, and I'm sure lots of people disagree with me, this whole expert analysis. Like, it's like any regular woman and plenty of rational men who were willing to speak or care about this could have said and did say a long time ago that this language is silly and unnecessary and tricks us all into thinking that that's a real thing, that sex is assigned at birth against the will of the baby, who may turn out not to be male or female, and we just need to let them decide. So I don't know why we need a science-y article explaining all this to us.
Yeah, all of that. I feel, the New York Times didn't just go along with all of this. They spearheaded this cultural revolution of getting us all to say stupid things like sex assigned at birth and refer to people by their preferred pronouns. They were like the point of the wedge of this thing, and on the left. They weren't passive observers. And now that it's okay, now that it's the tide has turned, they're acting like they're brave for publishing this. And what upsets me so much is the people celebrating it too. Like, I don't think this is anything to celebrate. It's way too little too late. Every law has been changed. Every institution has been captured. People have lost their jobs. Children have been sterilized. Women have been raped in prison by men who say they're women. Like this, it's just, it's too little too late. There's nothing to celebrate about this op-ed, but people are celebrating it. Like, look, isn't this progress? Isn't this great that the Times now is publishing this?
I know. I feel the same way you do. I mean, I understand, like, somebody commented on my Instagram post today saying something along the lines of, I'm just going to look at it right now. She said, I think it's a she. I agree with you, but my number one concern is for children, women, and men who continue to be so harmed by gender ideology. So I hope this kind of writing becomes dominant in the media soon. It's so scary right now that I don't dare demonize anyone who changes sides, which I understand that perspective. It's just that we could have stopped it before it happened if people weren't so cowardly. And this is a really important newspaper, and they aren't doing their job. And I think that's what's scary, is that journalists are not doing journalism. They're conforming to political ideologies in order to protect their their social status. And, you could argue that they're trying to protect your jobs, but like, why do the rest of us not need our jobs protected and you do? It's just, there's been so much harm that's been done over the past decade that could have been stopped right away.
Yeah. And again, the New York Times was pushing this stuff, that they were marketing it for so long. I remember back in like 2014 that the style section over the course of a few months ran multiple stories about wealthy style setters and their trans children. They were pushing, the style section of the New York Times is the top level trend setting, media in that class. Like this, it's like, what are the rich and famous doing so you can emulate them, right? Like that's what's sold in the style section. Like the most fancy purses, they sold trans kids as a fashion statement, as a cool, hot thing. And that was 10 years ago, before people started waking up, long before Abigail Shrier woke up to it. They were pushing this on people. On and on. I mean, they changed the languaging. They set the tone for all newspapers of how to talk about this. They were not passive observers or just going along with it. They were setting the trend.
Yeah, I mean, these are the people who set these journalistic standards that you had to refer to men who identified as women as she, and you can't dead name people. I mean, they did all this as much as anyone. This would not have caught on without the mainstream pushing it in the way that they did and pretending as though this were the dominant opinion and that this were already settled. It's not like politicians did this on their own. Politicians just do whatever their voters want them to do in many ways. They'll be pretty wishy-washy about most things and will say one thing and change their mind if it appears that the other thing is more popular and might win them favor. But I feel like the mainstream media set the standard for this, and the mainstream media was responsible for censoring and blacklisting the women who were speaking out and for vilifying those women. They all were, all of them, all of the mainstream media participated in that, and certainly the New York Times. And, again, it's like, I don't know what I want or expect. I almost rather that they just consistently be fall in on the trans ideology thing than to publish this and then people be like, amazing. I mean, it's not amazing. It's just obvious. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that there's lots of people who disagree with what I'm saying.
Well, what they could do is their own version of the WPATH files, right? They could report on the scandal of pediatric gender transition. That's not a one-time story. That's an ongoing story.
Right.
Sort of like just because the Boston Globe broke the pedophile priest story didn't mean no one else covered it. The New York Times has covered that story over and over again. That would have been good progress if we saw on the front page of the New York Times that this industry is not based in science at all and is hurting children and should be stopped, or at least
report on what's happening in the prisons, which nobody will do. So
totally. Or cover have the sports section really talk about what's happening in women's sports. No, they continue to support transgenderism, but allow these, I think these were conservatives, right? Isn't one of them affiliated with the Heritage Institute or the Heritage Foundation?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. The Alex Byrne person?
Yeah, I think that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with him.
One of them's a conservative. I had it pulled up, but it was like, who are these people? And why is this op-ed so boring? It was so boring. I feel like it could have been written in a much better way.
It was boring right from the beginning. The first sentence was boring. As you may have noticed, this is probably an editor's fault, not their fault. I can just imagine the editors boring up although it's, I don't, maybe the op-ed would have been boring anyway. As you may have noticed, sex is out and sex assigned at birth is in. This is the worst first line, but I've had an editor like that. Alex Byrne is...
Oh, American Enterprise, not Heritage.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. It's a more conservative think tank. It's not nearly as conservative as the Heritage Foundation, but yeah.
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I mean, it's just about, and who gets to publish these op-eds, because, you know, I can only imagine how many times women have pitched op-eds to the New York Times. I mean, I know how many op-eds I was pitching in 2016, trying to talk about Bill C-16 and other things that were rejected or ignored. I'm sure lots of women that we know pitched to the New York Times over the years, trying to share their concerns about the impact on women and girls and kids, and you know, what's happening in sports and what's happening in prisons, and they choose this.
Right. And it's all focused on this phrase, sex assigned at birth, not an editorial of why the entire ideology of transgenderism is bullshit. Like that would have been better, not just this one phrase. And I don't know. I think that any woman with a radical feminist analysis or critique of gender could have done a better job at explaining why it's insane to use the phrase sex assigned at birth for so many reasons. One, with industrialized birth and all the prenatal surveillance, nobody, maybe 1% of Americans or less, wait until birth to find out if they're having a boy or a girl, right? Even among home birthers, people know what sex they're having before that. Now, especially with the non-invasive prenatal testing, like with a blood test in the first trimester, people know the sex of the baby. You don't even have to wait for that 20-week ultrasound. So it's not being assigned.
This is another thing that I find funny about this idea that you assign sex at birth, or that people have sex imposed on them, because you can, sorry to interrupt, but it's just, you can tell a person's sex through a blood test. You don't need to look at their genitals.
No, and that's what nearly all parents are doing and announcing it. It's not even this, like the baby's born and the doctor yells out it's a boy or it's a girl. That's never happening anymore. Everyone knows the sex of the baby they're having before they go into birth, unless they're an extreme, low-tech outlier in our culture. Everybody knows. Two, it's so asinine. People know whether their baby's a boy or a girl, whether or not an authority figure announces that. Do people think that if the doctor tells a family that their child that's born with a vulva is a boy, the parents are going to believe that doctor? That's crazy. Like, it's not assigned. Parents know what their child's sex is, in the same way everybody knows what sex their dog is. No one's confused about that. And you don't need a veterinarian to come over after your mutt gives birth in the closet to tell you what sex all the puppies are. Everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, as Posey wittily pointed out, that she's not a vet, but she knows what a dog is. Is that what she said?
Well, yeah, that's what she said.
Did I get that right? I mean, I guess that's a different thing, but it's not, it's like in any other context, it's not a complicated or political question to say that's a rooster and that's a hen.
Exactly.
So my understanding of like the kind of origins of that phrase is that the trans activists connected their advocacy to this pushback against assigning sex to intersex babies. I know that David Reimer he didn't actually have an intersex condition. That was an accident. That
was a botched circumcision.
Penis. Yeah. But I think that there was a bit of a history around babies or kids who had particular intersex conditions, and the doctors would sort of decide, oh, you should raise this baby as a girl because that's easier or something like that. Is that true?
Right. I think that term does come from that community, the community of that gets called intersex. Intersex is not a medical term. Like, there's no medical condition called intersex. There are disorders of sexual development, and before genetic testing, there were babies that were born that had ambiguous genitalia, and people couldn't tell if the baby was a boy or a girl. It's very, very rare for that to happen. But when it did happen, those kids were assigned a sex, and the family was told to raise the baby this way or that way, because also, sexual stereotypes were a lot stronger, right? Like, what does it mean to raise your little boy as a boy, right? It's,
Right.
hopefully that has loosened up. But
Yeah.
again, things are different now. There's, almost 100% of women forced into birthing in the hospital have genetic testing in the first trimester and know if their baby is male or female or has some kind of disorder of sexual development. Like, those show up in chromosomes, or another one shows up with testing that's done within the first couple of days of the baby's life. So we don't have kids like that being born anymore where we don't know if they're male or female. Like, we know now.
Yeah. I mean, I think Carol Hooven, I did read the first half of the article. I just didn't get it all the way through, I'm afraid to say. But I think she explained, so she wrote, sex is now seen, in terms of why this term has become the norm. Sex is now often seen as biased or as a biased or insensitive word because it may fail to reflect how people identify themselves. One reason for the adoption of assigned sex, therefore, is that it supplies respectful euphemisms, softening what to some non-binary and transgender people, among others, can feel like a harsh biological reality. Saying that someone was assigned female at birth is taken to be an indirect and more polite way of communicating that the person is biologically female. The terminology can also function to signal solidarity with trans and non-binary people, as well as to convey the radical idea that our traditional understanding of sex is outdated. I mean, I'm sure that the New York Times wouldn't have published it if Byrne and Hooven had said things the way that I would want them to be said. So, fair enough. But like, I think that I still am of the mind that, going along with the idea that there is such a thing as a transgender person or a non-binary person or like a trans community, people keep suggesting to me that I, form allyship with, trans people, or, maybe we should make sure that everyone knows that this isn't about hating trans people. We don't hate trans people. And I've said that myself. I've, defensively been like, of course I don't hate trans people, but, what I mean is that this isn't necessarily like, it's not about hating anyone. It's just about reality. And, like, it's not an insult to say that you're a man just because you are wearing a dress or you wish you were a woman or whatever. But like, what, I don't know, like this whole, I feel like if the New York Times had published this article 10 years ago, then it would have been a good article. If they published this article in 2017 or 2018, it might have been good. Although I still feel that it's of course ridiculous to be explaining why, sex matters in terms of things like health and biology, which she explains in the piece. But, what is like, to me, I'm like, what is even the point of this?
I know. Because it's too late. So it was written in such a boring way. But I do think these authors understand that sex is real and immutable and no one can change it. And that's what they were trying to convey, but in a very boring, convoluted way. And I did read, it reads as though they don't actually believe transgender is a scientific condition. Like they kept saying people who feel this way, people who think this way about themselves. So it was almost subversive or almost radical that way, but they don't just come out and say that. Like you have a sex. It's, from the moment you are a fertilized egg and on, that is your sex and it can't be changed. They didn't get down to talking about already in most states in this country, you can change your sex markers on your federal identification, on your health identification. And again, it's already too late. They didn't talk about how this has already been done. Like, we're already pretending humans can change sex and they can't.
Yeah, this is already the law. And you know, Seawolf in the comments says, "I'm so sorry it took me so long to wake up. I was in my own world." But you know, that's in large part because the media wouldn't cover the fact, you know, when Bill C-16 passed in Canada, nobody even barely knew that it passed. Like nobody really knew what this was because the media would barely cover it, and they just kind of slipped it in and pushed it through. And then those of us who were paying attention, they wouldn't publish our articles or allow us to speak about this or interview us about our concerns. And you know, so like, how would so many people have known this was going on until things started to get so crazy that it was unavoidable, and some people with much larger platforms started talking about it? It's barely the individual's fault, because where would they have seen that this was happening until they're like, wait, what the hell is going on? Why is there a man in the change room? Why is Leah Thomas competing as a woman in swimming?
Yeah, I'm less forgiving about it because there were very high profile propaganda events that people could have spoken out against. And I'm thinking about Bruce Jenner in, what was it, 2014 or 2015?
Oh, that's right.
Woman of the Year, Vanity Fair.
In his corset.
Yeah, exactly. With his giant hands, like his hands are hidden behind him because they're giant man hands.
It's so embarrassing. It's so all these people are going to be so embarrassed that they did this. I mean, they of course will never admit it, but how embarrassing that would have been to fawn all over Bruce Jenner, like flaunting his fetish.
This disgusting autogynephilic man who is famous because he won an Olympic gold medal in an Olympic category women aren't even allowed to compete in. There's no female decathlon. So
I didn't know that.
No, there's no female decathlon. Or at least there wasn't at the time. I don't think there still is. And everyone had an opportunity to say, this is bullshit. This is crazy. Men can't turn into women. This guy's a pervert. It was public knowledge that he'd stolen his teenage stepdaughter's underwear and to masturbate in it. And still people allowed this perverted man to be the face of transgenderism and called him a woman, and he won Woman of the Year, and people didn't speak out. And then the other was the Orange is the New Black that mainstreamed men in women's prisons. And people had an opportunity to say, hey, men shouldn't be in women's prisons, no matter, you know, if they have breast implants and are taking estrogen and think they're women. That's, you know, it was a very public opportunity to speak out against it. Those two things happened around the same time all the laws were being changed. And instead everyone went along with it because it was cool.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, everybody that I knew in Vancouver who stopped being friends with me knew what was going on because they're friends with me, and they decided to abandon me and vilify me and support the trans community so that their friends like them.
Yeah. Right.
So you're right. Fuck them.
Exactly. People can't say they had no idea, because you show me anyone over the age who was over the age of 15 when that Bruce Jenner Vanity Fair story came out who didn't know this was happening. Everyone, 99% of Americans who were adults or older teenagers knew this was happening at that point. It was being rammed down our throats.
Do you think that there is an op-ed that the New York Times could have published that you would have been like, yay, they published this. I'm so happy, finally.
Yes, if they published a big op-ed that says, the headline of which is the TERFs were right and they're still right.
Totally.
Yeah, that'd make me happy. Absolutely. You know?
Oh my gosh, me too. Yeah, I was thinking as I was asking that question, I was like, you know, if they published an article acknowledging all of the women who said this from the beginning and were vilified and canceled and threatened, and just said Mary Lou and Kara and Posey and Megan and Jermaine and Janice and Julie and everybody else, you know, you guys were right. Like, men aren't women.
Right. We should have listened. Everything's fuck now. Children are being sterilized. Men are in women's prisons. The La Leche League is encouraging disgusting, perverted, autogynephilic men to feed babies because it gets them off. Yeah, everything is a mess, and we should have listened to you, and we're sorry. That would make me happy.
Yeah, you're right. It's not, I'm not just, that makes me feel better because I started to feel like I was just mad no matter what happened. It's like, oh, well, great. You say this now. Great. Oh, okay. Well, you changed your mind. Oh, you woke up. Like, I'm so curmudgeonly about it.
They are signaling, because it's the New York Times, and this is a massive propaganda outlet for the liberal professional class, right? And they are signaling to their readership that this is an acceptable opinion to hold. So that maybe is progress.
I think that you're right. I don't think that's progress because it just doesn't signal that anything's going to change in terms of their reporting and their integrity, nor will it change anything about, it's like, I don't think it's going to encourage people to be brave. I think it's going to encourage people to wait around until the New York Times says it's okay for them to say this, and then they will. But otherwise, they're just going to go along with it, over and over and over, whether it's, the COVID response or transgenderism or, whatever the next narrative is.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I don't know if they went back to doing their jobs as journalists and as reporters and were holding the state accountable instead of being a propaganda arm for the state, then that would be good. And if all of these elites who are going along with all these harmful ideologies and policies because they want to maintain their elite status. I mean, it's so ironic because the people who are the most privileged in America and in Canada are the ones who go along with all this stuff and push it.
Totally.
They're the ones who could risk like speaking out because they own a house and, they have an inheritance and they have rich parents and, they're the ones who are actually going to be okay. And they're the ones who don't say anything because social status means more to them actually than anything, even I guess, than money.
Yeah.
I mean, except for J.K. Rowling.
Who we love.
But she came up poor though. This is what, when I say like, oh, like I don't like rich people, and people are like, well, no, but there's some good rich people, and there are some good rich people, but those people didn't come from money.
Right.
People who are from moneyed, wealthy families where it's just passed on. People who are of the upper class suck. Sorry.
Well, they're definitely almost all of them very allegiant to their class, and it's a culture that you and I can only observe, right? Like we don't live in that culture. We'll never be in that culture. But it's pretty clear from J.K. Rowling's behavior that she comes from the working class. Like she doesn't behave like other billionaires because of it.
No, she's not proper. She's funny. She's, she's sarcastic. She doesn't care. She doesn't care what these critics are saying to her and about her. She just mocks it. I think that I don't know. I mean, I just started reading, I got a review copy of Batya. I wish I had it, but it's over on the table. Batya Angar-Sargon's new book, Second Class, about, I think it's like how the elite abandoned the working class in America or something along those lines. And it's very good, of course. She's so great. Her last book was also great. But, it just, I think that class is everything. I mean, I don't, all this race stuff, even the gender stuff, I've sort of come back to, I suppose I've come back to my Marxist roots in some ways, where like everything is about class and maintaining allegiance to your class if you're in the upper classes, and keeping the working class and poor out, and deciding what's best for the poor and working class, and also just not really caring what's happening to the poor and working class. And the poor and working class are doing so badly in America, and in part that has to do with immigration, because they bring in this cheap labor, and then the working class people are out of luck. But if you say anything bad about immigration, the elites will tell you that you're a racist. The liberals, the people who read the New York Times will tell you that you're a bigot and a racist. And it's like, these people are trying to survive and they can't survive. These are people who are working full time and on benefits, and relying on, that's ridiculous. Like, you shouldn't be working your ass off and struggling to survive, and on top of that have to be getting like food stamps and other government benefits. Like, that's crazy to me. And so many people are. I'm
right. Yeah, I was listening to Batya's interview with Barry Weiss this morning, and it was really good. It's on the Honestly podcast. I'm really excited to read her book, and I think she's brilliant, and she's one of the few people covering this issue in a very holistic way. Yeah, also the reason that the working class is having a hard time right now is because of inflation caused by printing all that money during COVID, when the government shut down enormous parts of the economy and gave everyone who was not deemed an essential worker all of this free money, right? Yeah. But the working class did not benefit from that. Those of us deemed essential workers, i.e. expendable workers, right, by the government, we didn't get free money from the government. Everyone who was laptop class or whose job was not deemed essential got free money. So there's so much resentment about that as well. Everything costs twice as much as it did before that, as anyone who knows anything about economics knew was going to happen. You print trillions of dollars, it's going to very much decrease the value of the dollar, and everything will be more expensive. So I think, the working class has a lot of good reasons to be mad at the Democrats right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, needless to say, like, I'm glad that the mainstream media is failing and that everybody's being laid off and all of these big papers.
I know they're all going to be
going under.
I wonder what it'll be like when the robots are writing the op-eds and writing
the same.
It'll just be the
same. When, like, don't you think that AI could do most of what these, I don't know. I bet AI could write an article for the CBC pretty easily.
Oh, yeah.
About drag kids.
Oh my gosh. That was also happening. The drag kids, the drag queen story hours, people had many opportunities to notice how completely disgusting and fucked up this entire movement is. And hardly anyone spoke up because they were cowards or they were brainwashed or both.
One of the things that I did want to talk about this week was the Nickelodeon reveal, that doc series that came out, I think, last week. And it was, for those watching, it was called Quiet on Set. I watched it on Amazon Prime. You had to pay a little bit for it, alas. And I mean, I feel like this connects in some way, because I feel like there were people who were sounding the alarm about, and people who have been sounding the alarm about what's been going on in Hollywood. The two Coreys, they did a documentary about the sexual abuse and exploitation that they suffered and the impact of that. And we've all been watching child stars turn into addicted, insane messes who far too often commit suicide. And you have to wonder what's going on there. It's not, again, this isn't super new info either, but because we're dealing with Hollywood and these elites,
Oh, you're frozen up, Megan. Shoot. Can I tell she's frozen? Uh-oh. Sing us a song. I wish I could. All right, she's gonna come back. Okay, her Wi-Fi went out, and I'm like, I'm not good without the banter without Megan, but give her a minute.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi
Hey.
for a moment. It's apparently connected to my AC, which is also out. My lights. I don't remember what I was talking about, but
about how there had been people speaking out against the exploitation of kids in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, and I think those people, I don't know, I know there's people out there who know a lot more about this than I do, but I've gotten the impression over the years that if you did speak out about this kind of thing, obviously your career would be over and you'd kind of be destroyed by the industry. And you know, the media, it's again another one of those things where it's like, I'm sure that the media knew about this too. I'm sure that, you know, people tried to get op-eds out or tried to get the media to cover what was going on in terms of pedophiles in Hollywood and child exploitation, the exploitation and abuses of these child stars and so on and so forth. And that, you know, they didn't, because I mean, they for sure would have been punished had they, but
yeah, I think it's not surprising to anyone that Hollywood is an exploitive industry and has a long history of sexual exploitation of both children and adult actors. I have to say, just on an individual level, watching all of this and seeing all the reveals about Nickelodeon and having young adult children now who I think watch Nickelodeon, what makes me most uncomfortable is my own self-examination about using the television as a babysitter of my kids, and how I had no idea what they were even watching. Like, I know my children have watched iCarly and these other Nickelodeon shows, but I've never seen them at all. And because they were doing that when I was not actively parenting them. I had other stuff going on, which is why you sit your kids in front of screens. But looking now at these scenes and like the overt, disgusting sexual innuendo and the sexualization of these female child actresses, if I had seen any of that, I wouldn't have let my kids watch it. And I have no idea what they were exposed to. And I wonder what percentage of the time that was going on. I would imagine the vast majority of the time, no adult was watching these shows. And that's part of why this went on for so long.
Right. I've never seen any of these shows I'm not of the right generation to have watched. So I've, you know, barely had heard of these shows, to be honest. But I mean, when I was a kid, we weren't allowed to have cable. So I wouldn't have been able to watch anything. You know, my parents wouldn't really let us watch very much TV. It was very specific what we were allowed to watch. But then at the same time, you know, by the time I was, I bet, like 11 or 12, you walk home from school by yourself and your parents aren't home yet. So you're just watching what you're watching. And I guess luckily I wasn't watching anything bad. I was watching like Saved by the Bell and stuff like that.
Well, and that's the demographic that these shows were aimed at, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
But so my parents probably wouldn't have known what was on that show. I'm trying to remember if I doubt they would have ever intentionally watched Saved by the Bell. I mean, it's the foot fetish thing was really gross and strange. I guess the showrunner, now ex-showrunner's name was Dan Schneider, right? And he was the main character of this series. And he had been, you know, like, I watched a couple videos from people who were younger than me, so who sort of did grow up watching these shows and watching Nickelodeon. And okay, Adelita is eating my sweatshirt, literally. You know, there was lots of this going on like all the time, this inserting of like foot stuff into these shows. And there was a point where I guess Nickelodeon requested that kids send in photos of their feet, with something written on them. I can't remember what it was, some kind of gimmick, but like really gross. And then all this disgusting sexualization. I mean, I feel like it's easy to say as a parent when I'm not a parent, I think that we've seen in the past, I'm trying to since the mid to late 90s, I suppose, probably more like late 90s, early aughts, like the way that young girls have started to look a lot older than young girls. I think when we were kids, the kids on TV just looked like stupid kids. They weren't like, they didn't have a ton of makeup on, and they weren't sexualized, and they weren't in mini skirts, and they weren't, dressed like, young adults or older teenagers, which so many of these girls were. There was one girl in the series who was complaining about how they would put her in such short skirts that the costume woman or whatever, the wardrobe lady would want her to wear bike shorts, and then even the bike shorts were too long for the skirts. And they were dressing in and behaving in ways that were beyond their years, and that was what was being modeled to kids. And you can see that reflected in the culture now. You can see that in the TikTok videos that 13-year-old girls put out into the world, and these girls don't look anything like the way that 13-year-olds looked like when we were kids.
Right. And the images of Ariana Grande being a preteen and early teen actress on some of those shows, and they have her wearing what is essentially lingerie as her out and about clothing, and doing all sorts of sexualized behavior that looks like porn scenes. Did you see some of that? Like she tries to drink water upside down and pours it all over herself. They like spraying stuff on her and getting stuff all over her face, where it's very much, they were making pornography for pedophiles with this. And
Totally.
And pedophiles would chime in about how the scenes could have been better, and maybe next time do this. The one of the videos I watched where this young woman was parsing out what was happening, at one of them they had Ariana Grande sitting on cakes, which is literally a porn genre for perverted men, and they had 3 separate scenes where they showed her sitting on cakes. Like, they were making porn
gross
out of these young actresses, these child actresses.
That's so gross. I didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, they were creating, the scene with her and the potato and trying to get juice out of the potato and the water all over her face. And they showed numerous examples of, these girls getting slime or water or something sprayed into their faces, all reminiscent of porn. And then I watched an interview with Dan Schneider where he was given an opportunity to pretend to be really apologetic about the whole thing and play innocent, and cried. He was obviously not really crying. It was a totally disgusting video, but just pretend, of course these are things that I would never do now. Of course this wasn't intentional. I'm so embarrassed. And you're right. I'm so sorry this ever happened. And, I think in the future, what needs to happen is, there needs to be a therapist on set to make sure that all the kids feel like everything that they're doing is okay. And, how do you put these scenes into these kids shows and not, you obviously knew what you're doing. I didn't know that there were also pedophiles who were commenting on these scenes.
Yeah, one scene that I wish I hadn't seen any of this, but now it's burned in my brain, where this young woman who was commenting on it showed a scene where the 2 young actresses were like slathering cake batter all over each other, and then the male child actor walks in the door, and they're lying on the ground completely covered in like icing and cake batter, like mud wrestling kind of style, male gaze stuff. And the male actor walks in and just says, "God bless America," when he looks at it. That's not accidental. That's sexualizing children. Absolutely. Maybe they're young teenagers, so it's okay, but that's so far beyond what was acceptable in the past of like, I don't know, I'm thinking, what were the Happy Days or something, where there was some sexual innuendo with the teenagers, supposedly from the 50s. But it was nothing like this. This is just straight up pornified behavior, and enforced, like putting this, scripting this for children.
Yeah. And I mean, like I grew up watching Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High, which was a CBC produced. The CBC actually used to produce some good shows back in the, I guess late 80s kind of thing. And sex was addressed, but it was addressed in kind of like realistic and serious ways, and the characters in the show would be dealing with serious problems where there was an accidental pregnancy or a younger woman was taken advantage of at a party when she was drinking, and what do you do? They're dealing with like questions around abortion, and and one of the characters who gets pregnant goes through with the pregnancies, and there's this kind of stuff, but it's not sexualized. It was very, and none of the characters were particularly attractive. They were all quite like regular looking Canadian kids who were kind of, nothing special, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they were fully clothed, right? They were
wearing lots of clothes, and it was like there was one character who she had a really, really conservative mom, and she would change to kind of more risque, sexier clothing after she left the house when she got to school. But that was like a thing. Like, the kids were like, "Oh, is she like a slut?" Like that kind of, it was feminist in a lot of ways. Right. It was sort of in that early 90s feminist, like anti-slut shaming thing and anti-rape thing, but it wasn't pornified in any way at all.
Right.
And these shows, I think, what ages are these shows aimed at?
Oh, Nickelodeon's for little kids, right?
Yeah, like this is even like a younger thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, it's crude and unsophisticated and has no cultural or educational value. Like, this was a pedophile acting out his fantasies with these child stars, and it's I'm glad it's coming to light. Nothing's happened to this guy though, right? He hasn't been charged or.
Well, he did. He went, not Dan Schneider, but the guy who raped Drake Bell, whose name was, did I not write down his name? Brian Peck. So Brian Peck went to jail for lewd acts with a minor in 2003 for 16 months. And then when he got out, he got a job at Disney.
Oh, of course he did.
Life of Zach and Cody, which is a kid's show.
This is it's not unique to America. Wasn't that child, that producer in the UK, Jimmy Savile, who sexually abused all those children in the entertainment industry as well? And yeah,
he was a huge star in the UK for years and years and years, and was a total sadist and a pedophile.
Yeah.
And everybody knew. I mean, that's the other thing, is that everybody knows this is going on. So when that Brian Peck, when Drake Bell came out with these allegations against him, all these Hollywood people came to the defense of Brian Peck. Drake Bell got to the courtroom and he was there with his mother and his brother, right? And then there was, the whole other side, Brian Peck's side of the room was full, and all these famous people had written letters in his defense, like Alan Thicke. And just, can you imagine, first of all, coming forward with something like that, as a teenage boy? It would be so embarrassing and shameful. you know, it's so brave of him to have come forward at all. And then all these powerful people in Hollywood are siding with his rapist.
And there's so much of it in Hollywood. It's yeah, it keeps like people still defend Roman Polanski, who raped a 12-year-old and is, I think, avoiding extradition for it still at this day. You know, it's just rampant. There's two, you know, there's also the glaring issue of why don't the child labor laws apply to the entertainment industry?
I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know how this is a resolvable issue, but I don't think there should be any child stars. Like, I don't think kids should be working. Why are kids working? I thought that it was illegal for kids to work. Why are kids allowed to work like 16-hour days in Hollywood, surrounded by a bunch of adults? Like, these, but beyond the exploitation and the abuse that's rampant in the industry, you're stealing these kids' childhoods. I mean, child stars are all weird, regardless of if anything horrible happened to them. They're weirdos because they didn't have a childhood and they didn't grow up around other kids and they didn't get to play. They grew up around other adults and actually had to spend a lot of time alone in hotel rooms and whatnot. And they had parents who put them in this position, which I've always been very judgmental of parents who try to turn their kids into child stars and put them into acting and you know, try to turn them into pop stars. I think it's weird because what's the motivation for doing that as a parent?
Well, never works out well, right? It's always a bad thing. Childhood fame is almost universally terrible for your long-term mental and physical health. But again, we have child labor laws in the Western world, definitely in the United States. Why are these little kids, some of them babies, like there are baby actors that are on set, like infants. Why is this industry exempt? It's not legal to have kids working in the mines anymore, or working in the meatpacking industry, or working in retail. It's flat out illegal to employ children in every other industry. Why is this industry exempt? Because it's for our entertainment? Because it's, you know,
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I guess, yeah, because it's such a big money maker, because Hollywood has so much money and power. But I mean, lots of industries have lots of money and power, so I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess,
the oil and gas industry, like, we're exempt from the child labor laws. Have kids.
Everybody loves oil.
Field. Exactly. You can't live without it.
I mean, I don't know how we would resolve this, because it would be very hard to make television and movies without kids in it. That would be next to impossible.
You could use midgets.
Yeah, we'd use midgets, I guess. But I mean, it just, no, it never seems to turn out well for these kids who become famous at an early age, whether it's through pop music or movies or television or whatever. They get all messed up. And, you know, I was watching another documentary about child stars, and one of the kids was saying, which one was it? I think it was Will Wheaton and Stand By Me, which was a great movie.
Yeah.
Kids in it. But, you know, you don't really know how to function if you become famous when you're young, because that's the only way you know how to be and to feel good and to feel validated. So you end up on these embarrassing reality shows. You know, you can't get a good movie anymore, and you're now a young adult or whatever, and you end up doing these really embarrassing things because all you know is trying to find the spotlight and trying to get attention and trying to reach for fame again, which is a really unhealthy way to grow up.
Also, you have all of these professionals around you making money off of you. So you have an agent, and often your parents still are making money off of you. So other forces are pushing you to be on Dancing with the Stars and other embarrassing, sad, money-making things. Your agent will get some money if you do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what I think about these parents, is that, you know, I think that most obviously they're doing it because they make a lot of money if they have a child actor or pop star. And, you know, a lot of these parents obviously have really seriously exploited their kids and taken their money and left them with nothing. And this has been going on forever out there.
Right.
You know, in this documentary that I was watching last night, there was this very elderly woman who had been a child star in, like, I don't know, the 1930s or something like that, like literally when she was a baby.
Wow.
And she had made like millions. You know, child stars in those days could actually still make millions, which was surprising. It's like, did people make millions back then? But she got nothing out of it. You know,
Nothing.
Her parents took all of it and she was left with nothing. And that was a very common story for child stars of that era. And you see these stars getting screwed out of their income by their parents all the time. I think that's why people like Drew Barrymore end up divorcing their parents and things like that, right?
Right. She has an interesting story, and she's spoken out against the exploitation and abuse. Wasn't she an alcoholic at age 11 from just how traumatic the industry is?
When she was just around adult parties. Somebody in the comments just said she was at Studio 54 when she was like 7 or something. But yeah, she's got all these stories about she was at bars when she was a little kid. Yeah. She was around booze and drugs. And yeah, I mean, it's not appropriate for kids to be around all sorts of strange adults all the time.
No, but I mean, pointing out that this was happening in the 30s makes me just realize it's been happening for a really long time. And people used to literally sell their kids to the circus, right? That happened, like, you know, to the entertainment industry. The Dion quintuplets, that's so a really sad. I know, but it used to happen. I hope that's illegal.
Quintuplets.
Oh, they were so fascinating. They were born at, I think, in the 1910s in the Canadian outback. Like, they were born in French Canada, and they were the first and possibly only like set of natural quintuplets that survived. They all survived birth and infancy. And they had this very poor family and living in pre-industrial conditions. And their dad sold them to the World's Fair when they were infants. Oh, they were on display at the World's Fair for like a year.
How much money did he sell them for?
I don't know, but he sold them.
Did they have a mother? Where was the mother?
Well, I'm sure
they obviously had a mother.
They had a mother. She probably, the stories I've heard was he sold them. She probably didn't have a say, you know, just like
French. We should go back to those times when women didn't have a say and men got to make the decisions because, you know.
I've been reading in the manosphere that would be a good idea, that everything's gone awry since women can make decisions. But
everything's gone awry thanks to feminism. Ever since women's rights happened and the women's movement happened, everything's gone terribly wrong. So
you can't sell your kids to the World's Fair anymore.
Father can kids to the World's Fair without the mother's knowledge. He was making a sound economic choice for the family.
Totally.
Like, I don't think a woman would sell her kids to the fair. Probably. Do you think so? I don't know. I guess so. With some, I mean, kids get sold into prostitution in very impoverished countries all the time. Or
into marriage, child marriage, you know, when little girls are sold as brides. Yeah.
I mean, those probably aren't cultures where the women have a lot of say.
No, I don't think that's, right.
But
yeah, it's really distressing. And I'm glad this is coming out. It's too little too late, right? About Nickelodeon. And it's like, what's happening now is what I want to know. Like this is already done. Like what's going on now in Hollywood that we should be knowing about now and stopping now rather than waiting another 15 years to hear about like the huge abuse and exploitation happening in 2024, like when we're not going to know about that until the documentary is made like 10 plus years from now.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm trying to think of what a solution would be. I suppose if the kids just had their parents, if it was like a rule in Hollywood where it's like, okay, you can work, but your mom has to be there for every single second that you're working and you can't be left unsupervised with these strange adults.
I don't think we need children in Hollywood. I know it's a big sector of the economy, but do we need Hollywood? You know, do we need that? But I don't think kids should be working in that industry any more than they should be working in any other industry. And I think we need to examine that.
I don't think it's good for kids.
No, it doesn't make sense. Why?
I was just trying to imagine a movie that didn't have any kids, and I was like,
Well, now with CGI and AI, who needs actors, right?
Oh, okay. We found a good use for AI then. The
Totally,
child
maybe,
actors
or
can
at
be
least
AI'd. That
right.
might work.
Mhm.
That's what they do with all sorts of jungle animals and dinosaurs and,
Totally.
action movies and things like that.
Yeah, why not do it with the kid actors too? And then the pedophiles in Hollywood, of which there are obviously many, can do whatever they want with those, right? That's like gonna be a whole other issue of, is it illegal to make AI child porn?
Yeah, I wonder what the sexologists and the libertarians will think about that.
I
I wonder
know.
what our friends in the heterodox community will think about that.
I know exactly what
Friends of Elon Musk, what will they
it's a
think about that?
victimless crime. It's a victimless crime. You know,
Exactly.
child
Mhm.
sex robots. Yeah. Which brings me to my continual revelation that, I've known since growing up Catholic is that male sexual predators run the world. Like this, and just have since the Roman Empire, and probably maybe before that. But again, growing up in a diocese where the priests were literally running a child prostitution ring, and just like the Nickelodeon stuff, it took decades for there to be a grand jury report about it, and all the guys that were named were now either dead or in their 80s, so nothing really happened about it. But everyone knew it was happening at the time, nothing got done, and it was happening in pretty much every diocese all over the world for centuries. Pedophiles that have an inordinate amount of power in this world.
It's really weird. I know that's what I said to you before we streamed this week, was that I felt so naive because I just hadn't realized how many pedophiles there were out in the world. I'm only realizing now that there's so many pedophiles and child predators out in the world. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that these people would flock to a children's TV network,
Exactly.
and to somewhere like Hollywood, where these kids are in a perfect position to be exploited by the adults around them. But I had no idea. Like, I why are there so many pedophiles in this world?
What would the evolutionary biologists say? I just think all those.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I
I said the other night to a friend, I was just like, "Why?" I was watching some male weightlifter dressed as a woman, and he just looked so stupid and so ridiculous, and was complaining about there being a trans category, because of course he wanted to be in the women's category, and this organization, I guess, had come up with a solution, which is that, okay, there can be a male category and a female category and a trans category. But of course he didn't want to be, none of them want to be in a
No.
trans, they don't want a trans bathroom, they want to be in the women's washroom. um like, they should, why not make a trans bathroom, have a women's washroom, men's washroom, gym? No, we want to be in the women's washroom. Oh, why is that?
Right.
But yeah, like, and I was like, why are these men not embarrassed? Like, you look so stupid. What you're saying is so stupid, but just on its face, on a superficial level, you look so stupid. And I feel like, you would think men would be embarrassed to be walking around looking this ridiculous, but no. And my friend said that, well, they're mentally ill. And I was like, was there always this many crazy people in the world? Why are there all these pedophiles? Why are there, what
I
is
know there are
happening
an
here?
awful lot of pedophiles, and
Is it
really,
because there's lots of pedophiles and the pedophiles abuse kids and then those kids turn into pedophiles? Like, what's happening here?
I think pedophilia breeds pedophilia. I think people who are emotionally healthy and well are less likely to seek out positions of power than sociopaths. People who didn't get enough, I mean, maybe that's not what creates sociopaths. I was going to say people who didn't get enough love as a child, like, seek more recognition, right? Like, we know that people who are really emotionally stable and satisfied with their lives don't want to be in positions of power over other people as often as people who are unwell or sociopathic or sadistic or narcissistic. So I think that's a flaw in our system.
Well, it's like, I mean, Rogan was saying, I was listening to his interview with Coleman Hughes today, and he was saying that, because people had said to Coleman, "Oh, why don't you go into politics? You should run for president," kind of thing. And people have told me over the years, "Why don't you go into politics?" And it's like, why on earth would I want to go into politics? This sounds awful. But and Rogan said something along the lines of like, well, anybody who really wants to be the president probably shouldn't be the president.
Totally.
A normal, healthy, intelligent person wouldn't be striving to be president. That's a weird thing to want to be. Like, who would want to be the president?
Right.
Like, what kind of person wants to go into politics? It's kind of a, because I know some decent people in politics for sure. So I do understand it on a certain level, but on another level, it's like, this doesn't seem fun. I don't really think you'll be able to change much. You might be able to make like little dents here and there. People tear you apart. They dig into your personal life. Everything goes public. And you're dealing with all these sleaze bags, and you have to, I don't know. I think for the most part, you have to behave in a pretty phony way. And then it's also corrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's somewhat irredeemable at this point. I mean, if you were going to design a different system, if someone got the opportunity to do that, it probably would be best to keep it democratic, but no one gets to run. The community decides who they would like to have as their leader and strongly elects that person, not based on, who wants the position, but rather sit around of like who would be good in that position.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's too late to set that up.
Kate said, every eligible human with a minimum IQ has to be a politician at some point as part of the national service, which might work. Like, if we all had to do it, then things might be more normal and fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I didn't realize, I guess because I am not Catholic, I didn't realize how many pedophiles there were in the world. And it's very upsetting.
Yeah, there are a lot of pedophiles in the world. And even though we know, we keep getting these stories, like, I do know people seem to think that because we outed all the priests in the Catholic Church got taken down quite a few pegs in terms of their status and ability to control the world. It's taken care of, but the pedophiles didn't go away. They're still, they're still in all sorts of positions of power, and they weren't just in that institution.
If I were a parent, I would just be terrified. I mean, it's no wonder that people are so upset about Soji and these men and women's washrooms. It's so hard, I can imagine, to protect your kid as it is. But that's yet another reason why I'm wondering why these parents would stick their kids in Hollywood, knowing that reality. Maybe they don't know, but I don't know. How could you not know that your kid's very vulnerable because it's a kid?
Yeah, I think the parents of child actors are often narcissistic people trying to live vicariously through their children and willing to sacrifice their own children for that. It's such a messed up industry. I'm thinking right now about Jazz Jennings and just this child he didn't even start out as an actor, right? I guess his mom wanted him to be famous even before she decided he was going to be the trans kid. She'd tried to get him into child acting things. But this child was literally castrated for entertainment. And that, that kind of sums up the whole industry, doesn't it? That the level of exploitation happening and the child porn aspect of it, and this
kid on TV, and the mother's describing his neo vagina having to be dilated. Like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this? Why is everyone allowing this? Why, it's so voyeuristic.
And it went on for years. It went on for years that this kid was being castrated for entertainment value for season after season after season. And then when they finally get to, like, you know, he turns 18, which is what happens to children in entertainment. When they turn 18, they get completely overtly pornified. Remember, like when Miley Cyrus turned 18, she had to do all of this over the top pornified stuff to show she's like now sexually available. She's not jailbait anymore. For Jazz, that's when like the money shot of like he actually gets castrated at that point. And Marcy Bowers, the man who says he's a woman, who is this, you know, transgender surgeon who's castrating all these people, makes a comment taking pictures of this brand new adult, this basically still child's genitals, and says, "We've taken so many pictures of your genitals, you could be a porn star." And that made it past the editors. You know, that's out there as entertainment for the masses.
Britney Spears was apparently 16 years old when Baby One More Time came out. Did you know that?
I knew she was still a teenager. Yeah. Poor Britney Spears.
I know. I was just thinking what kind of teenager she was. And I think I just assumed she was older. But I mean, what kind of adult would put a 16-year-old in that porn costume and have her sing "Hit Me Baby One More Time" in a sexy baby voice?
Right. And have that marketed to teenage girls as well. Like the whole thing is so sick. Kate just pointed out that Jazz had his surgery at 17. I didn't realize that. I think it's too awful for me to think that. So that was a minor, just like Britney Spears. Yeah, and her story's been awful. And then finding out about her sister, Jamie Spears, who was exploited by Nickelodeon as well, and has spoken out about all of this. Like both of those girls in that family were sold to the entertainment industry by their parents.
Well, this is, again, you know, I don't have any trust or respect for parents who put their kids in these situations. I just really don't. I mean, I did feel bad for Drake Bell's dad, who was clearly really trying to be who was there all the time with him, went everywhere with him all the time, was really on top of this, was like, stay away from these people, and then didn't unfortunately have a say in things anymore. And he was just so heartbroken, and he seemed like a really nice man, and I felt bad for him.
It's terrible.
But the rest of them, I think, are just bad people, honestly. I mean, what kind of parent watches their child at 16? I mean, just full pornography, you know? It's like a porn-themed music video. And yeah, and I mean, Britney Spears is completely gone. She's completely messed up from her life and drugs and pharmaceuticals and stuff.
So many of them. I mean, Lindsay Lohan, she was an incredibly talented child actress who just was destroyed. Michael Jackson, you know, like that. And who talk about pedophilia breeds pedophilia, you know? I mean, he then turned into a perp himself after being so exploited by his parents in the music industry, his father, on and on. I mean, Britney Spears, the Olsen twins didn't fare very well. It's never good. Childhood fame is never, ever a good thing for people.
Well, and, you know, Kim Kardashian's mother, who put out pornography of her so that she could start her career.
Jeez.
Like, I don't think she was underage, but nonetheless, her momager, who's very wealthy, that whole family is super wealthy and powerful because their mother, Kris Jenner, made pornography with and of Kim and leaked it to the world on purpose, and then blamed Ray J.
It's such a disgusting family.
They're all disgusting
family.
You know, I used to watch that show religiously, and I just can't anymore. So
they have a lot of power. They talk about being trendsetters in our current empire. That's their role.
Yeah. Right? Melanie says Michael Jackson was innocent. I've heard that as well recently. I don't know. I think Michael Jackson may have been framed somehow. I think he was exploited throughout his life, even until he was an adult. It's I don't know. I can't say for sure because I need to delve a little deeper here, but I've heard things about him having not actually been a perp, and that was sort of a story concocted.
I mean, yeah, he's a really tragic figure, regardless of whether or not he's also guilty of atrocities. But just, it wrecked his life. Childhood fame and being in the entertainment industry destroyed him. And he was such a talented person.
I know. It's such a sad story.
Yeah, it's very, very sad.
Well, I think that it's been an hour and a half now, so we should probably wrap up. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Is there anything that you felt the need to add before we log off here, Mary Lou?
No, but I look forward to being challenged by the New York Times into being happy about something. I would love to see the headline, "The TERFs were right and remain right."
The TERFs were right. Long live the TERFs.
Totally. Right.
If there's any TERFs in Victoria or on the Vancouver Island area, I'll be speaking at an event on May 30th alongside TERF, long-time TERF, Julie Bindell, which I'm pretty excited about because I love her. We're bringing her in.
Nice.
And Bryony Dixon, who spoke at a couple of our island events that we did last year. She was forced out of the Nanaimo Fringe Fest for challenging gender identity ideology. She's a single mom, she doesn't have any power. This is what I mean. The kinds of people, Julie Bindell is working class too. She's a successful journalist now, but she came from the real working class. Bryony, had literally everything to lose. She's struggling to raise her 2 kids and, lost work over this. She hasn't stopped speaking out publicly in her community where she lives, also very risky. And Kelly Lynn Pyrie, who I interviewed last week, who has an incredibly tragic story of child exploitation as well. Is her father and his friends, or it might have been her stepfather. I'm trying to recall, but either way, she was sexually abused and exploited from the time she was a little kid, and as an adult decided to transition, thinking this would resolve her mental health issues, her body issues. Was encouraged, of course, by her therapist, and regrets the transition and is sort of attempting a detransition, but trying to speak out and offer some support and comfort to others like her. So she'll be speaking as well. So I hope that if anyone's watching, I did see somebody who was watching who said they were here. Oh, Seawolf is here on Vancouver Island, so we hope to see you there. Yeah, I'm trying to start TERF Island 2.0. It seems like it's an island to start, so that's a good start. But there's a lot of cool people on Vancouver Island. It does seem like there's a lot of TERFy people. There's definitely a lot of freedom people. There's a lot of working class people who are very angry about being silenced by the laptop class and the NDP bureaucrats of Victoria. So we're coming. I'll put that link. If you go to my Substack, which is meganmurphy.ca, you can find the info about the event there, but I'll also stick it down in the show notes on YouTube after we end off this stream. Joe says, I'm voting Rowling Murphy 2024. That would be so fun. And Mary Lou is also on Substack. You should subscribe. Her Substack is great. Let me find the link here for you all. Well, her website is enchantedfamilymedicine.com, and she's on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton, on Twitter at ML_Singleton. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern, and I've been putting up the audio of these streams because people said that they wanted an option to just listen to the audio. So it's very minimally edited, but I've been putting it up again at meganmurphy.ca, so you can check it out there. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary Lou.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
See you next week.